Billionaire from Alex once again, boys and girls. Bafwethu namhlanje I've got the publisher extraordinaire, activist of note, internationally renowned for that matter. I've got the one and only speaker, mentor, activist. She's passionate about youth development. She's going to share her story. I've got the one and only Mrs. Jabulile Buthelezi-Kalonji. But before we go ahead, ladies and gentlemen, you know the drill. You need to first subscribe, like, and share the video once you're done. And today's episode is brought to you by Monde right there, man. H2O for those who are more sophisticated. For people like us, Sitamanzi Delu, we're taking it from here, Mzansi, to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested in getting some water for your company, your events, for yourself, your fam, you know what to do. You can see the 5 liter right there on the corner of your screen. That's Amanzi Delu, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to Dr. Mtangube. If you haven't checked out his interview on the channel, you do know what you need to do. But back to our guest for today. I've introduced her already. Let her introduce herself. Ms. Jabulile Buthelezi-Kalonji, how are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm very well, Monde. Thank you so much for having me, and hi to your viewers and your subscribers and all your followers. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just introduced you with these wonderful titles, and you know that you publisher extraordinaire, speaker of note, internationally renowned activist and a mentor. How would you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Yeah, that's quite a lot of titles. Thank you for the props.
I forgot the other ones. Sister, wife,
a lot of stuff. There's quite a
friend.
Yeah. It's a number of caps. But I think I'm just, I'm a development enthusiast. I'm passionate about the continent, Africa. And I'm a passionate storyteller, I suppose, and quite keen on leadership and mentorship.
Yeah.
I think that sums up who I am and what I do in all the other spheres collectively.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where did it all start with your passion for development and just mentorship and your love for this continent? Because that's where a lot of your work started, and that's where I see you very active in. Where did the whole development thing start, and why are you so passionate about it?
Yeah, so I trained as a financial journalist, and I essentially wanted to actually do like news reporting for the African continent.
Wow.
But when I got to, at the time, it was Times Media. I think it was Afusa Media, then it changed to Times Media. I think now it's Diso Black Star.
Okay.
There wasn't a specific beat for like Pan-African content.
Yeah.
So the closest I could get was to train as a business reporter.
Yeah.
Because then I knew I'd be closer to company news, which gives me some exposure to leaders, global leaders, local and Pan-African. And I think that's the least I could do, because I couldn't imagine myself reporting on politics or tabloids. I never wanted that.
Okay, so why? It seems like it's the one that's got a lot of money for an ordinary Joe like me.
Yeah, well, I doubt there's any money at all in journalism. The reasons why I essentially left it, you've got to really be passionate about what you're doing. It's not an industry where one can make a lot of money unless you're a sub-editor or editor or managing director. But just a normal reporter for the kind of things I wanted for myself, I wasn't comfortable to stay at that level. So I quickly jumped out of traditional media, the newsroom, to join corporate.
Okay.
But my interest has essentially, that perhaps birthed my interest, but it's always been who I am. I come from a Pan-African family. The issues of Africa have been my bread and butter all my life.
Black consciousness.
Yeah, it's nothing strange or weird. I grew up with a father who was an activist, part of NUM and all other unions, quite a hardcore comrade himself. I think he really instilled it in me, the idea of reading, standing up for yourself, having your own ideas, standing by them. So for me to study journalism was a given. For me to be an activist was normal, because that's how I was raised, to always be at the forefront of justice. So I think the interest has always been there.
Quite risky though as a woman. I mean back in those days, I can just imagine while we were still growing up. It wasn't as easy as maybe one could say it is now as a woman. So weren't you like scared perhaps that, hey, I'm a totalanga, and then I'm just a woman who's crying out for justice in a male-dominated world?
Yeah. I mean, it's not really male, dominated. I mean, for example, luckily, I hear about apartheid, but I never grew up during apartheid years.
All right.
But we know the products of it. We, of course, are reaping the ripple effects of it. But I wouldn't say I grew up during those years.
Okay.
But having literally been raised and born specifically, well, not after, but being born at least in the latter years of it.
Yeah.
Young as I was, I was still aware because of what I would be schooled in at home.
Whoa.
What I would be schooled in from my family. So I've always been aware of the socio-economic landscape of our country. I've always been very young, but quite alert to what was happening. And I suppose in terms of navigating just society, it's always been an issue and a challenge of, why is this girl talking too much?
Yeah.
She's so formal, right? Because this is a men's topic and it's current affairs and only men are supposed to talk about this. And I come from a family where I sit down with my father and we talk about current affairs.
Yeah.
And we actually debate and he takes me to task.
And he engages you on the topics there.
I grew up, for example, being dropped off at school. He would drop me off at school and my friends would... There'd always be this fuss about, did you hear YFM at the time? YFM was the thing when I was in high school. And I'm like, what FM? What? Eventually I got to know about it, but my dad wouldn't have it. We in the car listened to 702, so I grew up listening to John Robbie. And I'm like,
So for the 2000s now, told us please no piano, and then the next thing when are you busy? Stock price indexes there, no.
Yeah,
sure.
So that's what he would be driving to work but dropping us off first. We are listening to 702, and if there's a switch, it's a switch from 702 to SAFM. So it's current affairs.
Yeah, and of contemporary stations.
And if he is in a good mood, sometimes on a Friday, which is hardly, people get YFM.
Okay.
Just for like a few minutes. But I think I don't know what he was trying to do. But I think I get it because that's how we would brood. Current affairs are literally just at the top of your head. But I find myself slightly older now and I'm finding myself trying to detach from it because it can be toxic.
Yes.
But I cannot completely divorce it because I also play a role sometimes as a commentator on social issues. So I've got to always have an opinion about what's happening in our society. So it's a constant balance.
Speaking about having opinions, I just want to ask you this in passing, Jabu. We've seen 3 prominent men in the world right now: Donald Trump, Kanye West, Andrew Tate. More men who are more right-wing inclined, right? For those who into politics, if you know, you know. We've seen those 3 prominent men being censored on social media, being banned from social media platforms.
Yeah.
As someone who studied financial journalism, someone who's very opinionated, who's always got something to say and who likes keeping people to have something to talk about, what's your take on that? Like, where do you think the world is heading with all these censorships? And just what's your take on free speech, on being opinionated?
Yeah, I think free speech is an imperative to democracy. As a journalist, this is what we are schooled in, journalism 101. Freedom of speech. People have a right to that. People have a right to news and their voices. And it has become even more rampant with social media because essentially everybody is a publisher. Everybody can essentially produce and publish anything. You can create content. So I am very much against the muting of voices. And I always say this, that we talk about democracy and always advance and say we are advancing democracy, but this is only when we fight for freedoms that seeks to liberate us or make us comfortable. But we tend to be unfair and be the very people who I suppose exhibit or inject a similar, twist of a coin. You mute voices. But I always say that the same freedom that you seek you should be ready to give to others.
Come
so
on.
Freedom of speech is for everybody. And I've seen how it goes with also popularism. I think at some point that has a lot to do with the social media currency. But a social media currency that's aligned to what? Because politics do have sides, and you have to always be clear about that. Sometimes the side that you're in is not necessarily popular.
Yeah.
It will be muted.
Yeah.
Even if it's the correct one.
Yeah.
And we don't just see this with the West, but I mean, you look at our politics across the continent itself. We have people doing actual work, people trying to advance some sense of good governance, but those voices are muted and being relegated as problem voices, problematic voices, people who always just want to protest and do nothing else, when actual people who have the mileage of social media, just airtime, are people who are pretty much not doing anything. They're just basking in this essence of popularity and this attention. So I feel that we are definitely headed towards the wrong trajectory if we go that route. Just recently, across Africa, we celebrated World Journalism Day, Press Day.
Yeah.
And this was the whole idea of how you're supposed to be cognizant of how journalists should be left alone to do their work. And I know they're not perfect. I don't practice as a journalist myself traditionally on a full-time basis, but I mean, I belong to the profession made me, and I do feel that as much as there are those few bad apples, it doesn't mean you paint the entire profession as being competent and having been bought or bribed. There are journalists
or have an agenda.
Yeah, I mean, we have those. We know times change. You have people in corporate who also advance their agenda in their own ways. To get whatever they need to get. It's the nature of humanity. People will always align to things that help them advance better. But I always feel like there has to be level-headed people in our society everywhere to help us always navigate back to, I suppose, what matters for us.
Wow, very, very interesting. As I said, that was just in passing, it's something that I had in mind based on just what's happening in and around the world. And you spoke about you being a journalist, so I was thinking maybe you could make a comeback in the career, to try and shift things up. But let's get into your life's work now. I want us to go into mentorship now that you mentioned how your father literally indoctrinated you with the current affairs. You need to know what's happening in the world. Why do you think mentorship is important, especially for an African child, where they say only 30% of African children have their father, present father, with them in their life? So why do you think mentorship is such an important thing, especially for us?
It's a very important question. Mentorship is everything. I know mentorship is for everybody, but I think it's a huge blessing for the Black community because primarily the Black community comes from a, fatherlessness side of, I suppose, positioning.
Yeah.
We have fathers who are present and those who are not present, and most of the fathers or the stats would show us that there are more of those who are not present. Not because they did or they are pretty much alive, living elsewhere, but they're just not interested, or they are interested for whatever reasons, they're not present.
Yeah.
The fact is, they're not present.
Okay.
This is a huge problem
because
you look at even the United Nations and how the SDG goals talk about how they should be raising a girl child and advancing a girl child. And my question has always been, who's this girl child going to marry eventually? Who's this girl child going to be friends with? Surely she's not going to go around being friends with other girls.
Girls the whole time.
She's going to go back to a community. She goes to school. She goes to church. Whether or not she chooses a different sexual orientation is besides the point, but she belongs to a community that has everybody.
Okay.
So if we divorce the boy child from the development of the girl child and only focus on the girl child, it's a problem because we again are creating an imbalance. And the argument has always been about how girl children have been disadvantaged for many years before, girls and women, and it's a fair argument. So I guess in that instance they will continue to take priority, but I do feel that deliberate work, similar work with similar effort has to go towards the men, the boy child, because you start there first with the boys before they become men. And I'm very much an advocate of mentorship because I am a product of mentorship.
Yeah.
I'm understand what it feels like to have somebody who's very important, who doesn't even have 2 minutes, give you a minute, because they feel that, you know what, she has something to say. I like what she's saying. Let me guide her. Let me help her. She's asking to sit with me for 4 minutes. I mean, surely it's not going to break a bank. Let me just allow her some space. I pushed, and people gave me that space, not because I was a girl and pretty, but I had to make sure that the time they gave me was worthwhile. I had to pitch, to say I am asking for 4 minutes because I wish to present ABCD. And after I've presented, I am hoping you can help me. So I had to be also clear and not just have the euphoria of I'm being mentored by business leaders and
multi-millionaire.
Be clear about. So they mentoring me. What's the journey? What are the targets? What are the goals? So I don't also waste their time, but also not risk being in the presence of greatness and you're not even aware, you know. Sometimes you have to be aware. So I think mentorship is very important because it does build young people. It is a fact. It does build them, and it does give them confidence to push for their goals in a very cruel world that sidelines you like nobody's business.
Sure.
Mentorship is there to say, you're not the only one. How about we patch this side? Okay, I'll cover this side. You push here, because nobody's an island. And if you are a person who is gifted, but you're struggling, but you know that you make it. You're not there yet, but you know. I mean, the vision is very clear. You definitely need people who are going to help you navigate your journey. You do the work because it's your path, but you need people on the side to say, try this. Have you thought about that? This won't work. How about this? So mentorship is important because we don't have trust funds like people say. You finish the trick and everybody's scratching their heads on what must happen and how's job, what's the plan. This is who we come from. I was raised in a township and I know what it feels like to get to that level and like there's no plan, and it's nobody's fault. They also had to play cards the best way they could because of how the cards they were fed with. They were given. I don't think it's anybody's fault that they couldn't give you what you've always hoped for and prayed for, but I do feel that you are well capacitated as a young person to then build whatever vision of greatness you have for yourself. That you can do. Yeah.
Okay, that's great to hear. Wow. So you speak about mentorship and how important it is for young people. What kind of mentorship do you do? You spoke about how you mentor from even here in South Africa to the African continent as well as abroad. So what kind of mentorship do you do, and through which channels do people get to hear from your mentorship?
I encountered mentorship through Public Campus Ministry, which is a department or a segment within the Seventh-day Adventist Church, because I affiliate to the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Okay.
And I got in firstly as an ambassador doing youth work, and this was not because I work for the church, but this was because I do development work in my community. And I suppose the church liked that, and so they happen to benefit, which is a good thing, because I believe your gift comes from God anyway. So eventually you need to, it has to pass through the church.
Amen.
That's my view.
Amen.
And I started mentorship through Public Campus Ministry. So it's more spiritual mentorship when it comes to Public Campus Ministry, but then outside of church boundaries, I mentor young people in business and also academia, just personal development as well, to help them navigate their journeys, because I'm a deep believer of purpose. I believe we are not all here to just be very basic people. I really believe that people can do great things, and you cannot do great things if you are just walking by yourself. So it's important to have someone who understands where you're headed and help you get there maybe faster. You do the work, but they make the journey a little lighter and more lightning. So I journey with young people in that area, and I think I've been privileged because then through the work I've done with Public Campus Ministry, I've encountered young people, continue to encounter young people from Chile, Peru, Brazil, the UK, England, literally the world, basically. I mean, there's like 13 plus countries I deal with. But this is not stuff I got by myself. I got it because I became a designated mentor for Public Campus Ministry, and thus I had an access to that pool. But on my own, I do the similar work across the continent.
Okay, can you be my mentor?
I get those requests.
I'm joking. That one is jokes. You spoke about how it's affiliated to a particular church. Now, you look very Pan-Africanist, Afrocentric. Even your work is probably Afrocentric. What do you say to people who are like, oh no, Jabu, you're actually wasting your time? Because religion is one of the reasons why this continent is in the mess that it is. Or like, oh, this thing is the colonizer. This thing is part of the system. And then you go in there, you're going to put in your work, your energies, use your connections, your resources, your networks to try and inspire the next young president, doctor, Nobel Peace Prize winner. What do you say to such statements that are saying, oh no, you're actually fighting with the problem rather than against it?
Yeah, I think for starters, first of all, religion is part of a major problem of why the African continent is in disarray and essentially decay. It is a problem.
Yeah.
Because we've heard it many times before. And the first person to coin the sentence, by the way, I know it's all over the place, but the first person to coin the statement was the legendary Joshua Maponga, who's a good friend. He said that Africa is the only place who...
Pastor Joshua Maponga III, Marara.
The one
shout outs to him, and I wish we can get hold of him on the channel as well. I'm really, really wanting to do an interview with him. Great mind, by the way. Don't agree with him,
brilliant,
but I like his mind. I like how he thinks, yeah?
Brilliant mind. Underrated, but brilliant.
Underrated?
Ignored, but still brilliant. Because I've always learned, just a little bit of a quick sidetrack, people like him as well will get a lot of resistance because he's way ahead of where many people are even prepared to go. They're not even there yet. So you see the resistance he gets. Some of us look at it and we understand it.
Come on.
We've been there and we know.
Yeah.
You can see because we also just growing and you know what it means when you resist it like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're working on a completely different agenda.
Shout out to the Bishop, man. Wish to have you, Bishop Maponga. Please come through. Whoever knows him, who's got contacts with him, please let him know. The billionaire from Alex is calling him through.
Chances are he may just make the appointment.
It's gonna happen.
But I wanted to say that he made a statement to say that Africa is the only place that would shut down a factory building, literally demolish a church. So the statement is all over the place now. So
let's just repeat it again. Only Africans would buy a factory to turn it into a church, then pray to God for jobs. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And it's all over the place now, but he is one of the first people who made it popular.
Yeah.
And I do feel that this is why I'm saying to some extent religion is a problem, but in the same breath, I'm a journalist, of course, I'm a believer of democracy. I believe in how the Constitution provides and protects everybody to affiliate by choice to whatever religion they want or not to affiliate. And I'm one of those based on my upbringing and based on my personal choosing. I have chosen a particular faith. I have no issue with that. It's not something that when you talk to me, you've got to, first of all, remove the lens. I'm a black African woman, and all the other classes follow after that. So I don't think it's a big thing, and I don't think it's anything to, I suppose, class me with to try and dampen the work I'm doing in the continent. The work of the African continent, by the way, is the work every single person should be doing. If you are an African, that work belongs to you too. Yeah. It's just that we are more passionate, and I suppose have given it more 100% of the time to take it upon ourselves to do stuff. But it's a kind of work that belongs to everybody. So I do feel that as much as we sometimes decolonizing, or the concept of decolonizing is not necessarily about writing articles, publishing books. Sometimes it's about breaking down a system and the actual architecture of apartheid, which we still have in South Africa, the actual architecture of colonization, which is rampant across the continent, the actual institution and system. But you need to obviously decipher that bit by bit through language, through our stories. This is why I'm into storytelling, because that bridge matters in terms of the kind of stories you curate and produce. Stories are life. They're past. They're both the past, the present, and the future. So if you are able to influence and curate and position and maybe even control narratives, I think you are decolonize something.
Yeah.
So I don't think being a Christian is an issue, as much as I do not think being a Muslim is an issue. I think it's a matter of preference in terms of what people decide to choose, as everybody has a right in this world really to choose and affiliate to anything they want to.
Okay.
And I do feel like we need to get to a level as people where we see each other beyond who is a Christian.
The isms.
Yeah.
The labels.
Those have always delayed us and they'll continue to.
Yeah.
What we need to start relating at is a level where we say, we match here and this is the kind of progress we can make at this level. And when you go to pray to Allah and I go to pray to God, that's after we've done the work that puts us both at an equal footing of advancing our communities. And we can all be go and be our different selves and align to whatever we want to. Humanity is a common feature, and I think we should always take that further before we put in any other classes.
Brilliantly put there, Jabu. And I want us to get into your work as an activist. Firstly, what kind of activist are you? Are you a social activist, cultural activist, economic activist, billionaire activist, book activist? Just what kind of activist you do, and then what is it that encompasses you being an activist?
Yeah, I laugh because that title rather was also something that just fell on my lap. I was just minding my own business, being a journalist, writing, sharing my opinions, really just sharing bold opinions about things I like that I'm passionate about.
Such as?
Fees must fall, blackness, taxes, pretty much anything, because I have opinions, and they're not correct, but they're my opinions.
And I like that you're brave about saying it. Most people just keep it to their mind, and that's it.
I mean, I keep some opinions to myself. I certainly don't share all of them. I do certainly share some. So the whole idea of a social activist, which is what people called me, and I suppose I then would do TV interviews and radio interviews and be introduced as a social activist, social justice activist rather.
Okay.
I suppose found a perfect footing because it was obvious. I do writing, and most of my writing has a lot to do with the advancement and the progression of our communities, of young people, of culture, and of a whole lot of other things. And yes, I did go to the streets, I've marched, I've got the t-shirt. I'm way too old for that. I always tell, I'm like, you know what, I've been there, I've done that. Yeah, so right now, the kind of protest I would like to do is in the boardroom where I can influence policy through advocacy work, but the first step in the street thing, I've jumped union buildings, the tear gas.
I can't imagine you there.
I've done it. I think of it now. I can't imagine that I was there myself.
When was the last time you were in a street march?
I think it was actually not far, not too long ago. Just literally in the first year of COVID, we went to march at the Reserve Bank in Sandton.
Why?
With the women of South Africa, because we wanted economic inclusion and we wanted to deliver a memorandum at the JSE actually. So the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and I belong to this organization of remarkable women leaders and professionals, and we marched through the Sandton streets to the JSE to present our petition. That was the last time. That was literally 2020, I think.
Okay.
2 years ago. I did that with a mask on in the height of COVID, and I thought to myself, this is definitely the last time, getting too old for this. But the JSC was an important march, it had to happen. This march to,
So aren't you scared of like rubber bullets, shots being fired towards you? Are you not scared that someone wrong, and like, what were you doing there?
I think it's a risk you're prepared to take. It's a march, you're in the streets, anything could happen. People run, and people disperse us. You see now sometimes they can be so careless as well.
It's crazy. It looks fun when you're watching it on TV or on your phone when it's trending there, but
peaceful marches though are also okay. It was more of a statement march than anything, because it's women leaders there, still, it's still problematic, there's fights here and there, but a properly legal march, protected, we had police and all. But I've done all the radical protests, including illegal protests. I've done all of that. So I understand young people and their positioning when they seek justice, when they question, and when they are deliberate and intentional to change the status quo, I get it. I understand why. And I could never question the idea of a protest. I've got no issue with that. I just feel that as for somebody who's done so much work in development, in mentorship, at some point you need to help the very young people where it matters most, which is through policy, in the boardrooms, in meetings, and with people that matter, that actually make the decisions. So we can be in those rooms now, and that's where we can help them make the change. I cannot be this old and be marching. It does make sense. So at some point you need to flip the coin and help in a different way. I think that's where I'm at now. Yeah.
No,
that's done. I'm done with that. I can even write a book.
Can you start a song for me now?
I'm a terrible singer, but no, I'd rather not. I'm happy because with the digital age, it's all on there. So you come across a number of it. I'm never the one to say this wasn't. You will come across it when you search. It's there. Because history never forgets, you know.
No, I just can't imagine you there being at the forefront of Petisakila or Proitola, you know, taking it down there. But that's very, very interesting. It's a topic for another day with marches. And yeah, let's hope women do actually get included in the economy and just have equal opportunities as much as their male counterparts. So you're a social justice activist, if we had to put it bluntly.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the title fell on my lap. People call me that, so I wouldn't define myself as one. I think anybody who stands firmly in what they believe and stands firmly against what they don't believe is an activist. So, but I suppose people insist on giving me a title when it comes to activism, and they always settle with that one, so I have no problem.
Why is justice so important to you?
Because...
And what kind of justice are you seeking?
Yeah, I think as a Christian, for starters, you cannot not love justice. I believe God is just. And in instances where we believe He's not, there's a text in the book of Isaiah that even says, "Come, let's reason together." That for me is some sort of solicitation for justice, for agreement, for some sense of moderation and resolve between two different ideas. This is somebody who I would see as somebody I can reason with. Being able to reason with somebody is justice. Because you're letting them hear you and you hearing them.
Yeah.
You may not meet each other halfway, but you at least will get to talk to each other and both sides. I believe both sides always matter, including the wrong side. It matters. And as a storyteller, you cannot mute the wrong side because it's wrong. You still need to hear it out. Perhaps maybe position it differently, but you still need to hear it out. So I don't think you can be a Christian and not love justice. Justice is fairness.
Theology 101, philosophy 101. This is where the bishop is needed, you know.
And I always say to people when I talk on issues around public affairs and religious liberty, because I talk a lot about those in the church as well, which I suppose that's why this title also it just follows me everywhere. I gave a talk at some point just to reflect in the US, in Florida, in 2018.
All things live TV was still in the clouds. If it hadn't been for, otherwise I would have captured that.
Yeah, it's just recent. I spoke at a conference for public affairs and religious liberty globally. So this is the same conference where we had all denominations, people from the Baptist Church, Muslims, literally all denominations in the world. Hindu.
But for international recognition, we don't just bring you some usual ordinary people on All Things Live TV. International stage, guys. You gotta make sure you're the best at what you do. When you come onto the show, you must make sure your standards are the best in the world. Internationally renowned, best-selling stuff, billionaires only. That's the standard.
Billionaires, I like that word.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to aspire to.
You have to. We need more of that in Africa.
So just going back to the conference, I spoke about models of coexistence.
Yeah.
And I was positioning a few concepts of what we can do as Christian people who live and share space in this planet with Muslims.
Yeah.
And all the other people in denominations, faith denominations that we believe are wrong or whatever we believe, because Christians can have a heightened self-importance also, which is unnecessary.
Yeah.
But we need to coexist because we share space with these people. Our children go to school together with them. We are human beings and share spaces. We play golf, we go to shopping mall, Pick and Pay, and you cannot choose people to say, I will only interact with Christians. So it's important to have models of coexistence. And when I was talking about this, I shared one particular aspect which I want to share now. I spoke about humility, and I said that if you are not humble, or at least try to be humble, it will be difficult for you to learn to accept another person, or at least even hear them out. You don't need to accept them, but you can hear them. And hearing a person is a choice. You can say to somebody, I'm not going to hear you out. But you can also say to somebody, I'll hear you out, because you're a human being. Why shouldn't I hear you out? I think I've got the capacity to hear you out. So I think understanding that fairness is not just for Christians, and then everybody else in the world deserves unfairness. Or fairness is for the rich or the most, most well accomplished in life, and then everybody else must just go grapple there with unfairness. That is a big no. Everybody, for me, in my view, deserves fairness. Fairness for me is the equalizer in humanity. So you may be rich or poor, but I still deserve fairness. I still deserve respect, not because I'm rich, but because I'm a human being. And I've always said, before we are anything else, we are human beings. And so I do feel that justice is important, because for the world to sustain progress and development, it's important that we are just to each other, and that we are just even in our mannerisms and our interactions with each other, because only then we can be able to evolve and develop. If we are not just, we will constantly be stuck grappling with a whole lot of other things, because there's so much injustice. So injustice cannot thrive. Justice must thrive. So justice matters. And you cannot not be just if you're Christian, because God is just. Essentially, that's how I put it.
Wow. Okay, and for those to whom it applies to, they must listen and be just. Township Press Africa. What is that, Jabu?
Yes.
I know your latest work is that of Mr. Jabulile Buthelezi.
Yeah.
He's going to be on this channel very soon. The interview is coming up, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be speaking about black poverty. That's his latest work, and the latest work of Township Press Africa. Can you just give us, the viewers, the listeners, on what Township Press Africa is?
Yeah, it's my heart work. I call it heart work as in the heart.
Okay.
Because there's no money in publishing, by the way. I always tell people.
So it's a publishing house.
It's a publishing house.
Yeah.
Established in 2017, but we launched our first title in 2020 during the height of COVID.
Hey. In the COVID movies, there was a lot of work.
And COVID pushed all the dreams out by force.
Yeah.
No choice. You sat there in the house and you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't greet, you can't smile. So then create and produce. I think that's how it eventually was pushed out. But we had an incredible story of a former political prisoner, somebody who was part of the struggle of apartheid in our country, who spent time with ministers and presidents and people who are very prominent in the political space that we know today in prison, starting off as a young activist in a small little township of Akaville in Witbank in Mpumalanga. Again, the book was just a positioning of Soweto in South Africa. Johannesburg is not the Cinderella of apartheid. Soweto is not the Cinderella of June 16.
Yeah.
Apartheid, or freedom rather, in South Africa was brought by small pockets of all townships across.
Gomora is also included there. Alex, Lamsuakona. Gomora, you know.
In fact, if anything, perhaps even more significant.
Way more significant. I got an interview coming out in December. Nobabulinda Twala, a great man.
Yeah.
You should meet him. I don't know if you know him, but he actually got to explain to me about how Alex played a role. In fact, all of our presidents once stayed there.
True.
Yeah, so
that's why I call it more significant, because people don't know how that actually housed
billionaire from Alex. I'll never let go of that. Never. So yeah, very, very important. So you're saying that it's basically an accumulation of what all the townships have done for.
It was never a Soweto thing.
Yeah.
I mean, took precedence on June 16, the spectacle, because I suppose it's the nearest door. But the story of apartheid is not a Soweto story.
Yeah.
This freedom in this country was brought about by everybody.
Okay.
In all the provinces, all sectors, all corners. What was happening in Soweto sparked fires in Lehurutsi, somewhere in the northwest, or Middelburg, or wherever, because it was like a country phenomenon.
Yeah.
And it didn't just spark it there. We know it's literally like a very boring story in the Bible, my Bible rather. But we had support even beyond the borders. So it was never just what South Africans did by themselves.
Yeah.
It was never about that. We've had support from the diaspora, we've had support from our Pan-African friends in other countries and so forth. So the book essentially tells that story, which was a hidden story.
Yeah.
Because even I did not know Akavu was that active until I wrote, until I published Glory's book. It's called Akavu, My Anchor. And I think after that we then had a number of books, trilogy by Dr. Mlapo, who is from the township in the Free State but stays in Australia. He's based in Australia for about 20 years now.
Okay, wow.
And I think the rest is history, including our latest offering, and we still have more coming up. But I think the idea of why we're producing books is not because we are making money out of it, it's because I said that stories are the future.
Yeah.
Stories are life. And if we cannot document our experiences as Black people by ourselves, for ourselves, then we stand the risk of having our history manipulated by people who are using a spectacle of imagination. We don't need to imagine being Black. We are Black. We wake up and be Black, and we have a Black experience because we are Black people. This is precisely why we exist. We are that bridge that carries stories and ideas that are raw of Black people from their lived experiences as Black people and channeling them through for a Black audience.
Yeah.
Because it can never be the same. Obviously, the tone is not the same. It can never be, because this is a value chain of Blackness that channels a story of Black people for the world. I think for a very long time, Black people's stories and realities have been channeled by other people, imagining, thinking, and researching, and we don't need all of that. All we need to do is just talk about who we are in our lives, and we talk about it. So it's important to position our stories into history, writing ourselves into history, because if we don't, people will forget us, and those who do not forget us, they will be very happy to rewrite it. And when they rewrite it, it's dangerous, because they'll write it in their own way. Sometimes they'll even lie.
Wow, very interesting. So you talk about publishing just not even having any money at all. Yeah. What exactly does a publisher do, for those who are just wondering or don't have a clue? Or some people like us who still want to write some books there, and then we're thinking of getting hold of Township Press Africa to do the most. What exactly does a publishing house do?
We are a bridge that produces books, and those books must be read, sold. And essentially that's a job of a publisher. And what do you do behind the scenes? We edit these books, we proofread them, we curate the positioning of the brand, because a book is a brand. It's written by somebody who is a brand. If they were not a brand before, once they become an author, they are a brand, and you've got to look at them in that way. It's not just about them releasing a book, but they're essentially launching their brand simultaneously. So we look at, which is a unique feature we give and we provide. We look at how we can position authors as a brand, as brands, as thought leaders and thinkers within spheres that matter, depending on what they've written about. And also, it's not about money, because we highly depend on funding, like any other publish-on-demand business. There's plenty in our country. In fact, we're not just the only one. We just joined a cohort of all the others that's been there. We have funding. When we do have funding, great. We can then do lovely books of people who are talented, who are hidden, sitting on hidden stories that we can advance. So it's not easy, because it's a self-running machine. But we have to keep it going, because, like I said, the purpose of its existence has a lot to do with legacy and the positioning of who we are as Black people and the spectacle through which we are seen. So it becomes work that is important. The funding doesn't get in our way. If there's no funding, we seek for it, we ask for it. We do whatever we can to make sure there's always something for us to advance the next book and the next and the next. And we always say we're really trying to change the landscape one book at a time.
Wow, man. Very, very powerful stuff there. Thank you so much for coming through, Sis Jabu, and all the best with what you're doing, and may you keep on sharing and writing, capturing, producing those African stories authentically as you possibly can and as truthfully as you possibly can. Just a last word from you to all the young people out there from here in SA to the continent, to the diaspora, everywhere. What would you say as a mentor, social justice activist there, billionaire from Township Press Africa? What would you say, just as your last words, as we close out the interview?
Yeah, so firstly, I'd like to say I'd definitely love to be a billionaire. Maybe I should.
What's your plan besides Township Press Africa?
I'm into business, but I've never really, but hey, you've just given me...
Your boy has got you property there. By the way, if you guys are interested in buying or selling any property, car, let the boy know, by the way. The details are there in the description. You should know this by now if you're used to coming through here on All Things Live TV. Let the boy sort you out. So what about properties, Jabu?
Yeah, like I said, we now know where to focus. So now the message of young people, I will tell them to be true to themselves.
Yeah.
I am not the world's best human being, but I work daily to be the best I can be. When you look at where I come from, when you look at what has made me, you will know the strides I have made. It's not about how much money I have or how much social media currency I have. It's about the purpose I implement and my footprint of my kind of work that I infiltrate through all the territories I touch. And I could have never done this if I was confused about who I am. So you first need to understand who you are, in a sense of, this is me, I believe in this and I don't believe in this. I like this and I don't like this. Define yourself. If you do not do that, people will define it. They will define you for yourself. I think once you've been able to define yourself, it's easy for you to then say, that route is mine, that route is not mine. And whatever is not yours has consequences. Even the ones that are for you, there has consequences. It's life. You've got to be able to navigate, but at least you know you're moving through life through choices that you made, not choices that are just thrown by chance. I don't believe in people who move with the flow. I don't even know how to say this move with the flow thing. I do not believe in that. You have to wake up and be intentional about this is who I am, this is what I want. I don't have it now, but this is what I can do to get there. And I think it's everybody's capacitated to be whatever. I always say to young people, never undermine your capacity to function as a human being. You are capable, with or without the MBA or degree.
Come on.
You are capacitated. Once you are clear in your head about what you wish to get, you can get it if you work hard and you're prepared to work hard. So you need to understand yourself.
Work hard.
I think first off, understand who you are, and with you knowing who you are, I think for me it's a matter of how many doors can you open. It's up to you.
And that's it. Wow. Know who you are, know what you stand for, be prepared to work hard, be clear about what you want, just like the billionaire from Alex that's coming from the billionaire from Township Press Africa. Be on the lookout for the interview with Jabulile Buthelezi. That's Sis Jabu's latest work there. Very mind-blowing book. It's going to be on the channel very soon. But as for now, ladies and gentlemen, you know, it's billionaire from Alex signing out with Sister Jabulile Buthelezi-Kalonji. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. Very, very busy woman, but you made some time for us and the whole life is here, so we really, really appreciate it. All the best with what's coming up, and let's keep doing great things in the world, man.